everybody, to another episode of Men's Sexual Mastery Podcast. I am so honored to be joined here today by my teacher, my brother, Loren Johnson, a master of this work, a direct disciple, lineage bearer of Montauk Chia's work, a man whose shoulders I and many others stand upon. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Master Loren.
Thank you, Ben, for having me, all who are tuning in and interested in this topic.
Yeah, I'm really excited for what we're going to be diving into today, and wanted to start by just asking a little bit about a brief summary of what brought you into this work, how you connected with Montauk Chia, and just what's brought you into the space that you are now, you're a master teacher of this lineage. Can you talk a little bit about your journey?
Sure. Yeah, I came to LA at 18 to perform. I did that with humility, did the kind of as a gap model for a while, whatever. I didn't really want to pursue that lifestyle, so I took the money I made and I did yoga and learned other things. And my original awakening was Kundalini yoga, which is powerful stuff, but it can really overstimulate, so to speak, Kundalini syndrome. So then I started reading Master Chia's books because I was interested in the sexual teachings and in the Tao in general as the most grounded form of yoga that there is, that I'm aware of, after teaching it for decades in one of the most yoga-rich places in the world of California. And the rest is history. I just got my acupuncture degree, and just it all kind of started with Taoist yoga. It's basically self-Chinese medicine, which is the second most prevalent system of medicine practiced in the world after Western medicine. So it's the highest energetics that I've ever seen is the Taoist energetics that then Chinese medicine came from.
Man, that was so succinct. Yeah, that's awesome. I know there's so much we could go into as well in your experiences, but just to sync up, one question I wanted to ask you that I think would be a great segue here for anyone listening, just to get a little sneak peek into your life experiences. I wanted to ask you what has been the most profound experience you've had in walking this path, or you can even speak to a couple if you'd like.
Okay, well, one aspect, especially since, with respect to everybody, but it's also a juicy topic, to the sexual topic, it might serve to just, put this out there. The primary characteristics of sexual energy are amplification and binding. Okay, so obviously we know, it amplifies, but the binding aspect, it binds us to our partners, but we also use that aspect in the higher cultivation of virtue, which is the only real currency. So Master Chia famously said, if you want to merge with, you could say God, if that's your relationship with divine source, but you could say source, you could say the universe, whether you're atheist, agnostic, or full-blown religious, anything, this practice works. The Tao is basically sailing. Put your sails, with the wind, and then you ride the wind. So you want to, let's just say God, you want to merge with God, you marry God, you marry the source. Okay, so we can talk about my physical, again, G-rated, respectful, sexual practices that, the best pleasure you or your ancestors ever had. And how about that? Personally, partnership, but then also in the higher sense, you learn how to marry the source. You learn how to marry. Imagine, it's so juicy. You have the opportunity to develop that, because everything's fractal. Think like you can go on an escape boat with one person. You're probably going to take, your spouse, right? So if you can marry God, this is how we get to kind of the stairway to heaven of immortality, the enlightened immortality promised by the practice. We marry the source. So we learn how to couple yin and yang within us and kind of make love to ourselves, if you will, which is part of the idea of immortality anyway. Like the idea of an angel is kind of androgynous. You're making love to yourself. Think about how efficient that would be. And we can, hitch a ride on the energy body of these larger and larger natural deityales of the planets and the stars, and actually achieve what the Tao we call enlightened immortality. It's all there for the taking. So whether you're interested in just the best sex you ever had to full-blown enlightened immortality, I have profound gratitude for Master Chia. He gave us the path. His last sentence on this, very similar story he has that Bruce Lee had. Because when he came to this country, you will not teach this to Westerners. So for the first 5 years, he only taught non-Westerners, the Chinese in New York, year of my birth in 79. But what a blessing we have this now. This stuff's been guarded under penalty of death since time immemorial.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that we're just going deep into it, like union with God, sex, what I would even call sex with God. Maybe that makes some people squirm or
Yeah,
uncomfortable,
yeah, you
but
don't have to
it's
use it. Yeah.
union. But yeah, it's like ultimately that's what I've experienced too, is like, and yeah, we're going into the deep end of the pool right away here. Because that's like kind of what's waiting for us at the bottom of this work is actually that inner union that actually becomes so abundant that then we enter the 3D plane, we enter relationships with this overflowing cup of sexual life force energy, right? With this God energy, it's opening our channels, you know, not to get too woo woo, but like that's essentially like it's an abundant, infinite source of orgasmic energy that is coursing through our veins in every moment. It's actually just releasing the patterns in the nervous system and in the body, the clenching, the stories that are preventing us from having that union, you know, of the, and that's, I think when Ram Dass and a lot of these, you know, he talked about like mindgasms and heartgasms and, you know, these ascended masters who they've like transcended like sexuality. It almost pales in like human traditional sexuality as seen in porn or something, pales in comparison to the sweet nectar of union with all that is, with making love with all that is, right? That's been my experience relating to what you're talking about. Does that resonate with you?
It does. It does. It's wherever you want to go. The Tao can give you some tools to do that. Just if you just want the best sex you ever had, great. You've got that. But then you take all that raw sexual power and, you know, so to speak, fashion it into that higher. I mean, just for example, Napoleon Hill, one of his famous sayings in the Law of Success and 16 Lessons, one of them was about sexual power, the transformation of mediocrity into genius. Because in the Tao and Chinese medicine that came from it, kidneys, the prime organ that governs sexual energy, also govern the brain. That's one of the reasons men tend to not only predecease women, because we lose a lot more sexual energy through releasing too much, respectfully, everyone. So we die earlier. We also have cognitive decline before. So whether you just want to like have the best sex you ever had, manage your longevity, all that stuff, that's kind of like square one. But the higher aspect is the transformation of mediocrity into genius. And I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I feel like I'm tapped into my higher faculties. And when people praise me, I'm like, look, it's all the Tao. I give all the credit to the Tao. We're standing on shoulders of giants.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I completely resonate. And that's how we know when it's true. It's just like humming through our bodies. You can feel the truth of it. Anyone tapping into this who's listening right now, even listening in, like tuning into your body, like you know the truth when you feel it, or you know what resonates. And that's what drew me into this work, you know, is coming across Montauk Chia's books. And even from a young age, you know, coming from Christian upbringing and the ideas of sexuality that are calling it sin or that it's a bad thing, or the disconnection of sexuality from spirituality, which, you know, I'd love to shift into here with you, because I know you have a lot of knowledge around this. How do you see the Tao? Like, why the Tao? What makes the Tao unique from other spiritual practices, in your eyes?
Well, one word you could say grounding, because there's a famous term in the Tao, embody the earth, heaven will chase you. So the Tao means way. But the full definition is water course way. Okay, so Carl Jung talked about it too. Deep, 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 deep dive the subconscious, unconscious. You want your branches to go up to heaven, your roots need to go down to hell. Okay. And so to have that, think of masculine, feminine. And notice I'm not saying male, female. We all have masculine and feminine, just like the Tai Chi symbol itself, with that big white blob, the masculine, you have the inner feminine, the big black blob feminine, the inner masculine. That was the anima animus of Jungian psychology. Okay. And so it's a very feminine approach to life and awakening. The masculine wants something, it goes and gets it. I want that, I'm taking it. The Tao applies what I consider to be a wiser strategy. It creates the container, the condition, the grounding, the fertile soil, and you embody the earth, heaven will chase you. Because a lot of the heaven-centric, space-centered, ether-centered mandala systems, which the Tao is the only one that's an earth-centered mandala system that I'm aware of, okay? Because it's basically very grounded yoga. It all came from India, but then it got infused deeply with the shamanistic practices of China. When Bodhidharma brought Buddhism to China, he also brought Kundalini Tantra, and it got really, really, really grounded. And so we actually get more heaven than the heaven-centric systems call for, because we have a way to ground it. We have a way to carry it. It's like you found a treasure, but you have no way to carry it. And that's one reason I believe, my humble observation is, you see a lot of these masters that come from cultures that don't have quite the refinement of sexual cultivation that Tao has. And I won't name drop out of respect, but some of the biggest masters in the West that, you know, came from India, whatever, and they ended up being a pedophile. They ended up whatever, all this fleshy indiscretions, you know, and you know, and I think a lot of that just comes out of the lack of grounding. You know, so yeah, grounded. That when we were growing up, getting grounded was like, oh, my parents grounded me. Now it's like people throw that word around, get grounded, get centered. But how? How do you do that? And the Tao gives us that grounding. And then the deeper the roots and the higher your branches go up to heaven, so you carry your virtue, your sexual vitality, all this with you in the world, not get shorted out. This Kundalini syndrome's no joke. People really overeat their systems.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that a lot. There's a whole lot of energy moving upwards, ascension, ascension, ascension. You know, in psychedelics and Vipassana's meditation, it's like leaving the body to transcend. But actually, we chose this lifetime to be in the body. And what you just said, like root into the earth and heaven will chase you. Since you spoke that to me, since we started training together, that has been just a mantra that I can feel the truth of that so deeply, especially when so much of humanity is becoming disconnected from the earth, you know, is dissociating from their bodies, is stuck in screens, is like completely pulled out of being inside of themselves or being connected to the earth. For those of us who are rooting into the earth, who are these grounding rods, it's like the lightning is just striking on those of us who hold that, you know, and like that's my experience. There's like a constant lightning storm happening, you know, in the ethers. And the deeper we go into this work, and I'm experiencing it first, I'm even feeling my fingers tingling, like the lightning is hitting me right now. Like it's so difficult to describe, but like these are, in essence, like the internal orgasmic states we're talking about, you know, and it's a spectrum of energy that's always available, that's always moving through us. And it's not these one-off, you know, most of men who come into this work, their concept of orgasm is just this one-off ejaculation, which is just a sympathetic nervous system response, quick hit of dopamine, quick hit of oxytocin, and all the rest. And the cost of that is actually like losing a bunch of energy in that intensity, frying your nervous system a little bit, and missing out on the 10,000x pleasure and bliss that you can have through a lot of these practices, and which can be available and can be these waves that are actually moving through you all the time. You know, it's like, to me, it blows my mind that, you know, being called into mastering our sexual energy can be the path to enlightenment, can be the path to fulfillment, to wholeness, to completion, you know, of uniting masculine and feminine, uniting the sexual and the spiritual, yin and yang, whatever you want to call it, into an experience of like love, the deepest levels of love making and orgasm, if you want to call it orgasm, or union, bliss, oneness, completion from the inside out. And what a fitting time for this stuff to be coming to the mainstream. These things that you even spoke to have been hidden for millennia by the elite and powerful, you know, especially in Asia. But I know that this is knowledge that has been suppressed intentionally, you know, I would say by the church, and even mainstream Hinduism, Buddhism, religion. It's, you know, the suppression has been there this entire time because they knew that if everyone had access to this, they could no longer control us, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, you're very masterful in your communication, obviously. Thanks for the work you do. I mean, what you just said, I could kind of, you know, expand in a number of directions, but one major thing, so people feel like they're getting something just from this one conversation that could serve you. A major thing we do in the Tao to approach this skillfully, because the Tao equivalent of Tantra is called sexual kung fu, skillful practice of sex, is distinguish ejaculation from orgasm. Like Master Chia's one of his most famous books, Multi-Orgasmic Man. It doesn't say multi-ejaculatory, it says multi-orgasmic. And so we do commonly called edging, 7 and 8 is just great. You kind of back off in that undulation and you get into these states of full body orgasm like you're describing and just, embody very viscerally. I mean, when I'm in your presence, I feel that about you. You transmit. We're all psychic. It's like we like to be around people that, like the tens of thousands of dollars I paid in Hollywood to learn how to act. I learned two things: relax, have fun. If you're relaxed and having fun, people listening to you relax and have fun. And then you have that sexual just magnetism, and they're like, I don't know what it is, but I just feel good when I'm with this person. It magnetizes everything you're doing. And like you said, most people just waste it, waste it, waste it. Look, if we're not doing what we were designed to, sexual energy to reproduce, which is the vast majority of the time we play with sexual energy, why not raise it up to water up, fire down? That's one of the highest principles of alchemy across multiple spiritual traditions. Dharma tech, yoga, the Tao, Kabbalah, they all talk about that. Water up, fire down. And that amplification power of sexual energy is going to amplify the function of your organs, the function of your health, your chi, your cognition. You're again, like Napoleon Hill kind of gave us some sound bites, but he didn't tell us how to transform mediocrity into genius. And so, like, back to your question, why did I learn Master Chia? Like, nobody gave us the tools like that. I've studied deep dive. My original awakening was traditional Tantra, which again, the Tao imported it. It's kind of like the Japanese didn't invent the car. They just gave us the highest engineering. In my experience of, driving cars from around the world and all over, same way, the Tao is the best engineering. That sounds so judgmental. Gives us, in my experience, the highest return, and certainly of sexual energy, but the overall system, the most grounded. The Tao yoga, I think, is really waiting to be trending.
Yeah. I'd love to hear you speak a little more about how these practices, you've mentioned it a few times, but just how these practices can be useful just outside of having epic sex, and you talked about moving from mediocrity to genius, but also just in the climate that we're currently in, with just more and more seems like instability. What I spoke to, like more ungroundedness, more what I'm witnessing is like more fractaling and splintering of communities, of human consciousness, more isolation in the metaverse. People ascending into the 5D or into the these online, the metaverse spaces, and like not actually needing to even leave a dark dungeon prison cell of a basement stuck glued to a computer. I speak to this because I come from that space. It was like a precursor to, I can't even imagine what it's like now, but when I was 10 years old and addicted to porn and video games and building computers and sucked into that world, it was a prison cell. I didn't know it. I didn't know that I was just, ejaculating 8, 10, 12 times a day and like just draining myself, and I'd love to hear just any thoughts you have for anyone who went through that, because it's no coincidence to me that I hit puberty at like 17. I was like such a late bloomer. I had zero confidence around women. I'd have panic attacks around women I was attracted to. I mean, it was like severe isolation, unworthiness, depletion, just dumping and dumping and dumping Jing, which, in the traditional Chinese medicine is our sexual energy, and there's a limited amount of. But, for a lot of this, drawing back and looking at the patterns that are happening, I see it because I'm so tuned into that, because that's my home. Like, that's where I come from, is like complete isolation and fractalization and loss of all vitality and all masculine, all my sexual energy, complete drainage, and emptiness. So for those people who are perhaps like just emerging from that space, and for all of us who are kind of waking up within this prison cell, within this matrix of sapping our life force energy. One other thing I want to mention is just, I notice the deeper I go into these practices, the more I notice like cell phones and especially social media, like I can feel the draining of chi in my body. I'd love to hear if you experience that, but I'd love to hear about you speaking a little bit about just the waking up within the matrix, like how this sexual energy, what your experience has been navigating the world with this energy kind of inside of you as a life force, as a almost like a respirator, moving through a zombie apocalypse. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Master Chia said something early on with the COVID situation, that, I don't want to point fingers at anyone, but, we know there's some, we'll just say that there's some corruption with what we call mainstream media. Like, I mean, just with respect, I like movies and I don't have, I mean, just with respect, there's some corruption there. Like one of my favorite movies ever, Network from the 70s. TV raises more children than parents. And if you knew who owned the television, you would never, ever watch it, ever, let alone your kids. I mean, they're openly stated goals, like a vampire. You have to invite them into your house. And then we're raised by this. We get our values. This is cool. That's not cool. You have no idea who's doing your thinking. There's a famous saying, my yoga teacher came from hardcore secret societies where a lot of my original yoga teacher from India, before I started training in the Tao, where a lot of the Europeans learned their inbreeding, take over the world stuff during the days of the East Indian Company. It's all happened in India, how old their culture is. And he said, if you put a prison in someone's mind, you don't need a physical prison. And they did that top of the list, maybe even number one way they did that was sexual energy. It's inherently shameful. Even if you marry a virgin and on and on and on. That was done on purpose. Even the image we have of the devil, which in the highest sense of spirit tech, there's no such thing. It's all one God, and that's just the accuser and all the layers of even defining that. But the image we have of the devil is just Pan. It's the Greco-Roman god of fertility. They literally demonized our relationship with this. And that is why gentlemen and people tuning in, although guys tend to have more issues with this, I am fearless, I am shameless, I am doubtless.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first thing I teach people.
Those affirmations. Yeah.
Yes, because we're all waking up from shame. If you weren't blessed to have sexual trauma in your life, which is way more common than you think, it bet your bottom dollar it's in your ancestral line. And so you start waking up all this amplification. This is why I learned jujitsu. I'm lethal, man. I did a decade of it, because I would practice with these guys and oh, now I'm gay thanks to you. I thought they would attack me, and it's like, okay, dude, like, it's okay. It's okay to feel that good. It's okay. But that's what happens when you break the vessels. So I'm fearless, I'm shameless, I'm doubtless. If you got that alone from this conversation, because the negative emotion in the kidneys, prime organ for sexual energy, is fear. But fear in the past is shame, and fear in the future is doubt. And it's all fear, and it all constricts your sexual and overall creative energy, your cognition, because the kidneys govern the brain as well. You just can't function well when you're frozen, right? And so the promise of this practice, the best sex you or your ancestors ever had, is a real, I'm not just saying that. It's like,
I love it. I love it.
And most people, oh, I'm not worthy, shame, all this programming that's been there for thousands of years because they put a prison in someone's mind. So now we're in a period of time where here we are, breaking the vessels. So thanks for showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. That was good, bro. I love that. Yeah. And just speaking really quick, just contextualizing that a little bit more, like what you're talking about, the I am fearless, I am shameless, I am doubtless, like that's a beautiful affirmation that is in all timelines, the past, the present, the future. That's where that comes from. It's like dispelling fear, dispelling shame, dispelling separation, which is actually the program that we've been born into, just like you spoke to. We're waking up within our own dream to patterns that we inherited. And as we go deeper into these practices, it just naturally binds and amplifies what is. And as that gets shooken up, I've noticed in my experience, it's like a psychedelic trip, and I personally believe just psychedelics they just thin the veil of what is. They just open our eyes to the quantum space that exists beyond the limited perception of our day-to-day conditioned lives, actually. But the more that we tap into this these practices, I've noticed that binding and amplification of energy where just my vision is clear. It's moving from the mundane to the genius, like Napoleon Hill talked about it. It makes sense that this is what built empires. This is what made kings. This is what made rulers of the earth. This is what. That's why these Taoist, these were kept so secret and held by the elite for so long. And it's incredible to be open sourcing this, and even just this conversation now in like 2025. Like this is cutting edge spirit technology that is just now meeting a point in, I think, openness and even the Western mind, especially with a lot of the studies in quantum physics and mechanics and neuroscience, realizing that there are actually these quantum planes that exist, that we can, all these controls we have for placebo and for spontaneous remission and for all these miraculous things that can't be explained by science that are coming online more and more and more. It's like the cat's getting out of the bag and people are waking up to the reality. And the biggest thing that I like to say to guys is, you can, having this experience firsthand, and this is what we do at Men's Sexual Mastery. Like, I want to just deliver the most potent, transformational, systematic, modular systems to guide you into your own experience of this firsthand. Because the quicker that happens, the more you're free from me or any other teacher or anyone else trying to be a fucking guru. Like, ultimately, this is a direct link to God within us and around us, and ultimate power and peace and bliss and orgasm, and pleasure. That once we have that, it's like, holy shit, like they can lock me in solitary confinement. Come fucking get me. Like, I'm unstoppable. Like, nothing, I have no desire, no craving, no aversion, because I know I can go through anything and be connected to this source of energy, which, and even linking it into, without getting too far out, but like into, I think, even the truth of Jesus Christ, for instance, that reclamation for myself, realizing like, oh, it makes so much sense that that's how Jesus could be up on the cross, like when you're in touch with this energy, and people can be literally driving nails into your hands, and like that might be pleasure for you because you're alchemizing all of it. And that's getting into a whole nother level. But like, I do sense that when we talk about grounding this energy and breaking free from the patterns and limitations of what we have perceived about who we are and what we are capable of, just beyond even sexuality, but just in every dimension, this work in the Tao, I just want to echo what you're saying in my own personal experience. It has been the most transformational, the most grounding home, and just like you spoke to, ground into the earth and heaven will chase you. It's like there's doing less, slowing down, minimizing, like in a world of infinite opportunities and infinite knowledge, being able to hone in our focus and our just devotion to the simple, back to basics, to a deep state of listening and emptying our minds, and getting more and more into that parasympathetic nervous system state, which I always speak to. Like, this is the center of all the work, of all the healing comes when we can fully relax and find safety within ourselves. And that only happens when we're free from the programs, that have been running us. So this is what's possible. I just want to just transmit this, speak this out into the airwaves, that like, this is what we're talking about. It's waiting for you. And this tech is, I agree with you. This is the reason I devote my life to this too. It's the highest form of spirit tech, of whatever you want to call it, just energetic, transformational systems of spirituality, of physical practice as well, though, like longevity, great sex. Like, every area of my life has been completely transformed by this energy. So just wanted to echo that. And love to hear any other thoughts you have on that.
Yeah, well, understand too, the Tao is relatively, especially for what it offers, still relatively unknown. So just so, kind of one-on-one level, when Taoist yoga consists, you're basically your own doctor, I don't mean this in like medical advice level, but like Chinese medicine, you're basically doing self acupuncture. There's so many different systems out there. Sit there, listen to the sound of your breath. It's probably the most famous meditation, which is great stuff. But we're doing directed energy meditation, like the most famous Tao meditation of the microcosmic orbit. You're circulating energy with breath, with focus, because Qi follows focus, Qi follows a breath, Qi follows a spiral, because everything in the known universe is spiraling. Qigong language of energy, being a spiral. You're able to turn on your energy at will. So it's kind of like consciousness acupuncture, self-diagnosing the number one cause of disease of negative emotions, as it is said in the Tao, that have form and formless causes. Okay, yes, but still, where the rubber hits the road in our experiences, how do we feel? And we normally wait for, give me that $1 million and give me that amazing partner and give me that car and then I'll be happy. You can't give or receive what you don't have. It takes money to make money. Okay. So that's why the most fundamental Taoist practice, which is echoed in other systems, is the inner smile. When you're just vibrating that inner smile, 30 seconds of a smile, and I mean like, I'm just smiling for 30 seconds, turns on a happy, healing hormonal cascade. You start vibrating better. You enter that parasympathetic state at will, which is required for the creativity to flow. Even just in the name of good sex, a good erection, you need a parasympathetic state. And to enter all of this at will, that's the thing. Most people are out of control. Give me that hot partner and then I'll do it or whatever. Fine. Yeah. But so much of it, one of the major causes of ED is just the overthinking, which you touched on earlier. That's also one of the number one causes of disease in the Tao, which goes with the negative emotions, but too much energy in the upper part of the body, especially in the West. We're all so stuck in our head, so stuck in our emotions. It's just that up here, up here, up here, that ground in center, feel your feet, feel your belly, as my acting coach used to say. He'd catch us on stage, kind of getting stage fright. Where are your feet? Where's your belly? I think he studied some of the Tao, because then you ground in, you have access to your creativity, more energy. From the Taoist perspective, we have plenty of energy, plenty, but quite often we're just wasting it. From the sexual standpoint, from a loose anus and sexual organ, just learning some of these core, call them Kegel in modern time, or perineum power, Mula Bandha, in the yoga parlance. I mean, even just this one thing, I got over an inch longer in 6 months of doing this, just gently pulling on it. Most guys, it's actually not shrinking, but through life, our dragon looks like it's shrinking. It's not, but it's the root of our tendon system. So as we get older and less flexible, especially as we get the pot belly, it's pulling on our organ, and it looks like it's disappearing. When you pull on it, the sharpening of the knife, it's going to get longer. Okay, better functioning. You're going to desensitize it so you can last the minimum time of 20 minutes it takes to hit full body states and not lose so much energy when you do, in fact, go over the edge. This is the number one loss of energy for men. Number one. It's the main reason we predecease women, cognitive decline before women.
Yeah. And if you combine that with, and I love that you touched on this, a lot of the stuff being so psychosomatic. Like a lot of these ED and premature ejaculation, some of the stuff, it's like if we're not at ease and in that sympathetic state within ourselves, like I think honestly, sometimes I feel like a lot of these concepts, even the tools and teachings of the Tao, it's like all of this is training wheels, like even the microcosmic orbit, some of these things, we're using human concepts, because that's how our mind thinks, to just sort of drop into the body and use different visualizations and things that help just get us into the feeling of what's underneath the surface. And then there comes a time when it's just you're feeling it without even having to visualize anything, and you can that's when you like drop the training wheels on the bike, and it's like, wow, I'm like awake and alive to this system, this energetic sensitivity to like who we actually are as human beings. And that's cool that's what's unlocked underneath all the practices themselves. But what you were just talking about, the sharpening the sword and pulling, which is essentially just a practice that's taught in like the sexual kung fu Taoist practices for everybody, I've also noticed a lot of big shifts in that, no pun intended, getting bigger. But I love what you're speaking to, of like yeah, just the simplicity of like how we can remedy a lot of our sexual dysfunction or whatever you want to call it, just sexual it's a lack of sexual energy as men, but when you combine that, I'd say, with porn addiction and with ejaculation all the time, of course, like no wonder there are so many disempowered men combined with, all the media stuff and like what we've been taught. And of course, yeah, the it's complex, a lot of these issues, but it's amazing, Joe, just to connect in these practices and how they can actually, yeah, truly transform us from the inside out. It's an inside out job. And once we're coming from that place, it's like a motor that starts itself, like you said, with the inner smile. It's like starting, I often use the metaphor of like starting a fire in the dark, in the cold, in the void, like just moving into the void, moving into spaces where there's no light, there's no warmth, and we may feel this out in our reality, in our experience. Being the one who strikes the fire, who has this technology to build a fire out of nothing, like there is nothing more godlike or like divine or I think pure and noble as that, to create something out of nothing, to be the light in the world, to be the warmth, to bring that love and even to our partners, let's say sexual energy, but it's this energy, it's connected to all parts of our lives actually, and as we bring that inner smile, as we learn how to smile into the void, when shit's going crazy, as the world, with politics and world events, and not to mention our own personal lives, when there seems to be this chaos swirling around us, I often say that the image I have is like stepping into, like through these practices, what we're doing is like the world is a hurricane, and we're learning how to breathe, to smile, to step into the eye of the hurricane and open up to that light that is actually right in the middle of all of it. Like we can choose at any moment to actually just take a moment to stop, breathe, smile, and build these neural pathways, these new states of being into coherence, into peace, into stillness in the midst of chaos, and actually that polarity of being the alchemist kind of in the middle of the storm is what allows us to harness that energy actually and to be a conduit of it. So yeah, that's just what's waiting for you guys, anyone who's listening here. I know we have just a little more time here, Lauren. I wanted to just switch gears for a minute, and as we're landing this plane, and just hear a little bit about your offerings and how guys potentially could work with you, and also just kind of your projects right now, like what's lighting you up, and how can people potentially work with you.
Yes, well, I do a lot of training through and for Master Chia, so if people are interested in being a Qigong instructor through Master Montauk Chia, who's the most famous Taoist in the world, hands down, arguably the most famous yoga teacher of any lineage. His certification has worldwide recognition. So I do a lot of training with people. It's really nice because it can most or even all be done virtually. Again, the Tao is the most grounded. There's something there for everybody. A lot of people like, oh, yoga, I had a client who was in India recently, and like the Indians look at, so I was told, I haven't been there yet, but secondhand, they look at what we do. They don't call that yoga. Like the people, they go to these classes, they're jumping all over the place. There's so much gymnastic kind of Western stuff, infused in what most people are doing with yoga, that they hurt their wrists and on and on. The Tao is really, I mean, you've got the yoga technology from India. Buddhism was formally integrated. Got all the Chinese medicine in there, the martial arts. I mean, it's like it's the most well-rounded, grounded, the highest sexual practices. I mean, just yeah, it's all there. I do a lot of work with men's sexual health because I perceive that to be one of the biggest, problems. I mean, why do most guys have prostate issues, and why is ED the new norm, but it's not normal, and on and on and on. So I tend to, a lot of people come to me for that, but yeah, I train and certify people through Master Chia. I specialize in sexual health. I'm also a licensed acupuncturist, and that's kind of also my wheelhouse. But just in general, acupuncture is great for, a lot of stuff, pain and, immune system and all of that. But I tend to focus a lot on men's sexual health just because we need it. So thank you as well for for your work in that regard. My website, if people want to reach out, is Tao Yogi, Tao yogi.com. There's some free resources right there. And if you sign up to my little contact page, just so I can, message you or whatever, you'll get some access to some free stuff, including some of the Thai massage that I learned in Thailand that I infused with kind of the relationship empowerment stuff. You want to own your partner's pleasure? That alone is like worth reaching out for. My tantric Thai system, or with respect, because the Thai people tend not to, in my experience, having been there many times, some conservative energy there around relationship stuff. So I kind of reframed it Tao intimate massage, because the Tao doesn't have that same hang-upery, but in essence, it's Thai massage, which is the king of massage, and the tantric sexual reflexology is all in there. So it's a really nice way to navigate your partner's pleasure. So I teach that as well, and it's all there through my site. So yeah, reach out if you're feeling saucy.
All right, saucy. Yeah, well, I know that this is, I mean, we've had so many epic conversations and I've learned so much from you. So I just want to thank you for coming on here today, just for helping expand and weave with you, my own perceptions, but also for anyone tuning into this. These are really high level codes that are being transmitted. And yeah, I just appreciate all the work you put in, all the devotion into this field, like you mentioned standing on the shoulders of giants, like Montauk Chia, your teacher. And I also spoke in the beginning of this, and I want to speak it again, that, I'm standing on your shoulders. And it's cool that as each of us awakens, we're all these puzzle pieces. And yeah, there's like this awakening that's happening within humanity right now. And for those who are tuned into this and who are feeling called to this, whose frequency, who are picking up on this, like think of this like a radio signal. It's time. It's time. Let's, like, never before in the history of humanity have we had full and free access to this technology, and again, like as we talked about, I just really encourage people, like, wipe the slate clean of all the distractions, the mental masturbation, I call it, of all the explorations. You could spend hundreds of lifetimes just perusing YouTube, trying out different spiritual practices or studying the Kabbalah or studying esoteric, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, embodiment is actually what's most important, and firsthand experience and feeling it somatically in your entire body and system. That's what this is all about. And I just want to acknowledge you, Loren, as just somebody who carries that frequency. So thank you so much. And I hope if anyone here is listening who feels connected to you and wants to learn more, be sure to check out Loren's stuff. I will just say that, yeah, you've been absolutely life-changing for me, even in the short time, since we officially connected. You've just been activating so many things, even over Zoom. Like most of our connections have been over Zoom, like helping me answer questions and work through this stuff. And you are so multifaceted too, between detox and nutrition and, like you said, martial arts, and you've studied every lineage, and arrived at this. So it's beautiful to celebrate.
I don't know about every lineage, but a lot. And that's why I chose the Tao, because it's all in there. I mean, you've got it's kind of Taoist tech, just has the traditional yoga, the Chinese medicine, martial aspect, the meditative. It's like there's something for everyone. And the most, I'll leave it here because it seems to be the main topic of this meeting, the highest refinement of the sexual practices. There's a lot of amazing stuff, traditional tantra as well, but the Tao took that and made it, is the word you just said, it grounded it, it embodied it, the whole right-hand path, left-hand path, with respect. With respect, I've never seen any system as embodied and accessible and without the shame and all this, my God, around sex, the Tao right there. So thanks for the work you're doing. And again, to all those who are tuning in.
All right, y'all. Well, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Master Loren, and we'll see you on the next episode. Sending big love. See you soon.